The BREWtallyspeaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia. For over 30 years, they have been the go-to destination for all your music merch needs. From working with today's hottest bands to create truly one-of-a-kind pieces, as well as boasting a truly massive online store, Rockabilia is your one-stop shop when it comes to band merch. Use our code BREWtally at checkout and take 10% off your total purchase order. Huge thanks to Rockabilia for their continued support, and now, on to the show.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Brewtallyspeaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Rory from And So I Watch You From Afar. Their latest album, Megafauna, is out now via Velocity Records. Go check it out. It is very, very good, and it is maybe something a little different than you may expect from this, with it being more instrumental. But I think in light of some of the things that I sometimes like to partake in on my own time, sometimes music like that's a lot of fun to listen to and just kind of get lost in a vibe and in space, for lack of a better term. But all that said, it was kind of interesting thinking back to this episode for a few reasons. One of which was I'm always kind of torn and conflicted at times on doing press, quote unquote, when a band's on tour, because I kind of love when they're on tour because, you know, potentially they're updating their Instagrams a lot more and maybe something random and funny or cool happened, and we can kind of discuss that a little bit more as just like a fun story. But the other side of it that gets really annoying is having to deal with Wi-Fi issues. You know, famously, I can kind of think of like when I had Jake from August Burns Red, and he had to leave the venue to go across the street, and I think was literally in front of a church, and just basically was like, this little pocket has good signal. And he just, for like the hour we talked, just paced back and forth this like probably 30-foot section of sidewalk in front of this church somewhere over, I think, in Germany. But it was funny because Rory kind of had the same thing. Like, we were starting, and then the Wi-Fi issue was just kind of awful, and then he had to like wander around Chicago to a hotel and stay in their lobby to have a connection. And it kind of sucked because it didn't take a ton of time away that we would have had to chat, but it took, you know, a little bit more on already a short time span that we had to chat with each other. And so honestly, with that, I really enjoyed chatting with Rory, and I'm looking forward to hopefully having him back on somewhat in the nearest future to kind of do more of a normal one of these, a more long-form version, because I feel like there was a lot that I wanted to segue into and kind of dip into some tangents that we were in, but knew I had some other things that I wanted to ask, and we had very limited time. So all of that said, let's get into this conversation with Rory, and I'll kind of talk about some other things on the other side of it. Chicago right now, which is where I was about 12 hours ago for the Misery Signals farewell show. And I see, based on your guys' socials, you like to try to explore the city around you as much as you can. So what have you explored, and are you getting pizza today? And if so, where from?
This is the question. I'm gonna come back to you on the advice for this.
Okay.
So yeah, we do try and soak in as much as we can, especially having traveled such a long way to get here. So I think my brother's just gone to the Institute of Art for the day. Mm-hmm. Our drummer is loading up on coffee somewhere, and our other guitarist, Niall, who ruptured his Achilles tendon 6 weeks ago prior to coming here, is moving very slowly somewhere. And I'm in a lobby of a hotel, kind of sweaty. John, I have to apologize for the
No,
drop
you're
in
good.
my originally, but
This is what happens. The road is unforgiving.
The road is unforgiving, yeah. But feeling good. It's a nice day here in Chicago, and it's a cool city. So I need to come back to you now. Where are we getting pizza?
So there's two big chains that are, if you're going for the traditional Chicago deep dish style pizza, there's Luminaldi's, which is my favorite, and then there is Giordano's. And to me, they're just not as good. The crust, everything that kind of makes the pizza when you're getting a deep dish, I think Luminaldi's does it better. I was reminded that I literally had a thin crust yesterday because a friend of mine that I went with is diabetic. So he was like, if I get the deep dish, it's really going to like fuck with my like blood sugars and all that stuff. And I was like, as someone who's married now and has a wife that has just, been diagnosed with diabetes, I was like, I totally get it. I'll make concessions. It's totally fine. And even the thinner crust was actually pretty solid. So I think that showcases that it's just a good pizza, whether you get the deep dish or not. So as a pizza fan and a pizza lover all over, it's kind of one of my favorite things to do is try to find like local pizza places, and obviously Chicago style is a thing. I will recommend, some people may hate me for this, if you are fans of sausage, get it cut, because my wife and I made the mistake one time of getting it thinking it would just be like sausage crumbles, and it was literally like a giant sausage patty on top of the pizza, and it was about like this thick, and to me wasn't cooked all the way through. So it just kind of was like, this is a waste. Like, it's so much. Who wants this much sausage?
I guess people in Chicago.
I guess. I don't know.
Well, I'm taking a note of all this stuff, so I'll let you know what we end up falling on here.
Yeah. So something kind of more to the point of why we're talking. You got a new record coming out, and so something in the band presser, and I love getting these things because I don't think it's something that everyone else gets to see, because it's more for the publicist side of things to drum up engagement and get you excited about a record, or to want to cover the album or talk to the artists. But there's something in it that really just kind of caught my eye initially. And it was basically that you guys have a mantra that you've been using for a while of do the scary thing. And to me, as I get older, I'm approaching 40 in about a month and a half. And it's a thing where, I'm constantly thinking about things and life and, kind of doing the scary thing at times, whatever that may be in whatever medium. I would imagine following up Jettison, with as ambitious as that project was for you all, what was the process like to follow that record? What was the scary things that you did to expand and grow as artists and as individuals this time around?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think weirdly, the scary thing in this record was to strip everything completely back. Like, the record itself is, apart from a couple of like little bits of piano and maybe one little bit where there's some strings, the record is one guitar on the left, one guitar on the right, drums and bass down the middle, and that's it, And to sort of do that after, the success of Jettison, which was this really dense and long conceptual kind of piece of music. With all these narratives and the visual thing that went with it. I think the scary thing was to sort of go, okay, it's still okay to be in essentially a punk rock band and just rip out some tunes in the rehearsal room and record them. So I guess there was a bit of an exercise for us in sort of just trusting the feel of the music in the rehearsal room and trying to not feeling a pressure to expand and layer up and make a lot bigger.
Well, it's almost interesting to hear you say that, because it's almost like deconstructionists of sorts, where it's like you build something so big and then you tear it all down. It's almost kind of like, and maybe this is me watching a lot of real estate TV shows lately, where it's like, a developer spends 5, 6, 7 years building this massive, like, multi 10, 20, 30, $40 million home that just looks insane. And then they're like, yeah, I'm ready for the next one. And then you're like, oh, like this wasn't enough. Like you're ready to just, you tear it all down and start anew. And so it's interesting to kind of think about how we as people will kind of do something kind of big and then almost want to regress back to like tearing it all down to its most basic foundation and then kind of re-falling in love with kind of, I guess, the process, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, totally. I think that happens. Yeah, as you said, like it happens creatively and it happens in life as well. I think you've got to like go to the perimeter fences of stuff when explore, but the kind of tribesman in you always like then comes back to the campfire or whatever, And I think I don't think I think the value is in the journey and the exploration. I don't think any of those points are like the place to be always. I think you just got to sort of follow your instinct. And I think whenever we talk about doing the scary thing, I think we're often talking about it's not for the sake of it doing something which is just ridiculous and scary, but it's just sort of trying to follow your instinct in a more pure way. Because the older you get, in life, the older you get, the more and more things and experiences coming around you, and sometimes those can, the sometimes those have been painful. You've had painful moments going left or right or taking a side step, and so then it becomes a little bit harder sometimes to keep that up. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
Something that I thought was kind of interesting is, I'm a sucker for vocabulary and words and kind of dissecting them and so forth. And the album title being titled Megafauna was kind of interesting. And for the listeners maybe who don't know the word, so fauna is basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm 99% sure it's basically like where animal life is in an area or a region or something. So when I was trying to figure out what does that represent to you when you're titling your album this, because I could see it being a few different meanings, given the fact that there's not necessarily lyrics, but it's more about a vibe and all these kind of things. So how did you land on that? Because the idea of fauna and then megafauna would mean that there's just an overpopulation of sorts of these wild animals in an area.
Yeah, that's close to it. But the basically how it came about, I read this amazing article about Australia and about the first people who arrived in Australia uh, to um, to discover this, I suppose, this isolated area where there was no natural sort of apex predator in a way, and there was these marsupials which were like kangaroos, 10 feet tall, like these huge animals which had sort of evolved in isolation and become these huge kind of larger, yeah, these just incredible giant wild animals who were then very quickly sort of hunted into extinction. But the I like that. I like the kind of imagery of that. And where we grew up in the north coast of Antrim, to a certain extent, we felt like quite isolated from the world. Like, not sound super old, but we kind of came of age pre-internet.
Mm-hmm.
We would occasionally be able to find a CD, a punk rock CD in the local music shop. It's like, have you heard of this band At the Drive-In? Apparently, my friend Mark's got this CD, and we'd, all go listen to it at his house. And then you try and replicate that, and then you try and put on your own shows. And we were kind of in isolation, trying to almost make up our own version of these like cool scenes and this music that we heard growing up. So Megafauna to me was all sort of represents all those people I grew up with on the North Coast, these huge characters in my life and these huge inspirations and very influential people who we still see, regularly. And because we wrote this record during the pandemic and lockdown, those are people we were just thinking of so much because we weren't getting to see or hang out with anybody, and we started to really have that. You'll have had it too, where it's like when you're not able to have access to something, then you start to like cherish it so much and realize just how important it is, and so we wanted to, in a way, dedicate the record to those people. And we thought, that's a cool sentiment, and it's a sentiment that anybody else who grabs the record and listens to, they can be, everyone's going to have their own, group of megafauna in their life. Those big people that keep them straight.
Absolutely. It's funny. That's not where I thought necessarily the answer was going to go, but obviously makes a lot more sense when you explain it like that. I was wondering if it was sort of setting up a companion album, or maybe it becomes some sort of like a reimagining of this album, but where there'd be a Flora album.
Now that's a good idea, John, and I will credit you if this comes to pass. Megaflora.
Megaflora. It's a reimagined, like, a couple of years later, your 10-year anniversary. It's a reimagining of the album.
This is a great idea. I'm writing this down, John. Thank you.
Well, I want a 1 point for my idea.
Okay, deal.
All right, it's here. It's trademarked now or whatever.
Yeah.
Kind of, speaking, to, you were just kind of saying about, and serendipitously, the people that mean something to you, obviously being isolated, kind of, I guess, finding your people as well. You guys are approaching 20 years. And again, I think a lot of this line of questioning is coming from thinking about my own life and turning 40, like hitting a milestone. 20 years together as a band, I feel like I would be remiss to not ask this question and maybe find some information I can glean from you. But what have you learned about yourselves in that time? And what have you learned about each other in that time? Because this is basically a marriage and a relationship. So I feel like there's something that I can learn from somebody else that's done something that long.
Yeah, man. So I feel like if I probably get going in this answer, I could probably go for a long time. But I mean, I guess, without getting into it too much, it's like you really learn. I've learned personally. I've learned a lot of kind of emotional intelligence to spot when I'm maybe being when I'm reacting badly to intense situations, or whenever I'm a bit overwhelmed, and you sort of like learn to sort of be mindful of each other, and to be able to know when someone's maybe being a bit of a dick. They're like, it's you go to the origin of it's like, that's annoying, but you actually then are able to go, oh, hold on, what's going on today? I forgot, it's it's somebody's birthday back home, or there's a tough show last night, and so I think you start to like develop a bit more of a sixth sense for everybody's well-being in a way. I'm not saying that we're perfect and get on like a house on fire the entire time, but I think that as a general thing, and all the nuances of that has been like a huge growth for like all four of us, because we kind of started the band in our early 20s, and we were sort of you're just sort of a kid back then, and everybody has different ambitions, and everybody has different ideas of what where they want to go and how they want to express themselves. And you don't sit down when you're forming a band and go, okay, let's all get on the exact same page and this is all what we want to do. And you also don't realize that you're about to get thrown into very emotional situations where your hopes and dreams are all riding on the backs of your three other friends, and that you're going to have to learn how to do road tax for a car and a van, and tax returns, and you're going to have to figure out accounting, and you're going to have to do all these whole myriad of so anyway, it's all kind of messy at the start, and then you spend probably the first 10 years getting it creating a bigger mess, and then the second 10 years we've been unpicking it and getting to a point now where I think everybody's we're all happy. So yeah, that was a bit of a rambling answer, but yeah, within that, we've learned a lot, I think, all of us.
Well, I think there's something kind of to be said there because, and I've talked about this quite a bit on the show over the tenure of the show. But a lot of people start a band because it's a creative outlet. It's something to do with their friends. It's an expression. It's a creative outlet. It's all these things, but it's pure. It's there's no idea maybe beyond maybe we could record this. Maybe we'll play a show. Maybe we'll do a tour. And there's really never anything beyond that. It's kind of in its nucleus, so pure in thought. And it then becomes this overwhelming thing where, like you're saying, you have to learn about finances, you have to learn about, international travel, you got to learn about exchange rates of money, taxes, like all these things that you don't really care about. And then subsequently, the thing that I always think is kind of interesting about it and trying to think about what does it do to a person mentally, but you're then essentially creating something, and it is still a creative process, but now it's a commodity. It's something that's for sale. And so that kind of changes everything. It kind of takes away the pureness to a degree. And so it's interesting just to see how people navigate it, especially when a lot of times when you start this thing, you're so young and it becomes your whole identity while you're growing and figuring out who you're going to be and what you're going to be. And it's just kind of an interesting like maelstrom of like things that make people whoever they're going to be 10, 20 years later down the road, if they're still lucky enough to have this career that they've carved out for themselves. So I always find it fascinating just to kind of see how does it change, and are you aware of the changes as they're happening?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're aware of them as they happen, and I think that might be a bit of a problem in terms of, you like you said. I mean, we formed the band so that we could, maybe play a gig, and that was it. But then of course you play that gig, and then that's incredible, and then you kind of want to play a few more, and the next thing you find yourself, you've saved up enough money to buy an old beaten up van, and then then it's like, okay, maybe we can play shows further away, and then next thing you're on a tour, and you get that first tour poster in that you've got your buddy to design, and your eyes are just, what, like, oh, like, this is us, we're going on tour, that we're doing it. And you just have a series of moments like that. But the thing is, as with life, as soon as that moment's happened once, then you spend a short time in that moment until you're looking to the next bit. And the next thing you find yourself, with, say, we would bring out some crew now with us, and they're friends of ours, and they derive some sort of it's not a full-time job, but they derive part of their living from being with us. And then suddenly then you're into this weird zone of this other pressure, and you've got the other three, or our four band members who are able to take a little bit of money, and then so that changes each time, and then it becomes a way bigger beast. I mean, it's not like we're Metallica or anything, but you're sort of, like you said, those 20-year-old kids who started the band suddenly have like a way more weight on their shoulders, and it's a bit more, maybe high pressure is the wrong word, because it's a very privileged situation to be in as well, playing in a band. But yeah, those sorts of things, I mean, it's not my speciality to accounts and scheduling, and so yeah, but you do it all. It's funny, you still do it all for the gig and for the for the record and for the music and stuff. So yeah, it's a strange point to be at 20 years in, and sometimes have to try and take a little step back and go, okay. In fact, this is funny actually that you say this. Last night we were on the way to Chicago from where were we last night? Omaha. So we were doing a drive from Omaha to Chicago. It's like a 9-hour drive, and there's two bands, and we're sharing a bus, and we were driving through the night. So when we got onto the bus, our drummer Chris, a lot of our favorite band is Smashing Pumpkins, and we were like, we're going to Chicago, so it's Melancholy's got to go on. I wanted Sammy's Dream, but Melancholy went on, and we were listening to it, and Muzzle came on, with the big drum fill at the start, and Chris and I had a little look to each other, and we were like, man, imagine if you'd have been able to like tell our, me and Chris formed a band together when we were 12. We were like, wouldn't this be mad if we like could at 12 we were able to have a wee flash forward to this moment as we're like heading to play House of Blues in Chicago, and so yeah, that was definitely one of those, infrequent moments where you go, oh yeah, okay, this is it's all the accounts, all the scheduling, all the taxes, all the car insurance, it's all worth it for these moments.
I think having those moments, and I'm going to reference a very famous scene from a pretty big movie if you're into music. The scene in Almost Famous, the Tiny Dancer scene from the movie. It's a scene that, like, every time I've watched it, it's like it's just something so magical about it, and there's not really anything said. It's a lot of just like the rigors of touring, the fatigue of like interpersonal relationships. It's kind of a snapshot of that lifestyle back when it wasn't maybe as easy or quote unquote glamorous as it is now, where you have phones and you have like you can be dialed into everything around you and still stay connected. It's like it literally was kind of all of you going to war together, and just whatever happens and there's casualties and so forth, but through music you're able to reconnect and bond and have this moment. And it's funny, you talked about the Smashing Pumpkins moment, because I had something similar years ago, a tour I had booked for a friend's band out of New York. We did a week-long run of dates in the Midwest, and some of the places we were going I had never been. So it's like, I'm in the van, it's packed full of dudes and gear and shit like that, and I remember having my headphones in, and The Taste of Ink came on, and it essentially is a song about those guys living in a small city in Utah and kind of like getting out and something bigger than that. And it was funny because I lived in a small city in Michigan and I felt the same thing. And it was weird, like a decade plus later, music brought me to these guys because I started booking shows, brought me to these new places I've never been, put me in a van. And it was sort of my Almost Famous moment where I was just like, oh man, like music is the thing that like binds us and takes us on adventures and will take you back to these memories of wherever you were and thinking you would never see these things or whatever, and just how like crazy it is, this life that you've kind of given yourself to. And in those moments, it kind of, whatever horrible thing that was going on or however bummed you are or whatever, it just kind of goes away and you kind of get to be a kid again and just be like that optimism of just like, man, this is fucking cool. And I think sometimes we as people need to be in those moments a little bit more to be reflective of like, this is pretty good. Like these things I get to do, or this thing I'm getting to experience is pretty awesome. And I should be more in the moment and appreciative of it than kind of head down thinking about the next thing I have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I think you need to just take that into, life as a whole. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, the music aspect, they do, you talk about, when you're a kid from the age of 0 to whenever, you're spending most of your time playing, you're just picking things up, having fun, building stuff, and there's a point in your life where you kind of stop doing that or don't do that as much. And I always think like, if you get to be in a band, as long as you can kind of, as long as that's kind of what's going on at the base of it, you're still just, it's a big toy and you're with your friends and you're just sort of doing that thing. And when it feels like that is when it feels at its best. When it feels like a vehicle to do other things or to derive money or, all those things, it changes it. But you're right, if you can just purely realize that, the sound engineer, the driver, the audience, the promoter, the band, the lampy, everybody in that room is there for that exact reason you said, because they're just like, music is awesome. I like to be around it and it's good fun.
Yeah. I was reminded of that during the 3-hour road trip we took, me and my two friends. We don't hang out very often. They have kids, I don't, but it was like a thing where it's like, it just felt like being a young, like late teens, where you're all driving to go see a show and you're going a couple hours because you just like have the time and the disposable income to go do that and the experience. And it's just kind of like, I don't know, it felt very youthful, even being crammed into a small car. I stayed in the back seat and tried sleeping in the back, like on their way back. But it was just a thing where I was like, man, I kind of miss this, but it's also what makes me feel younger. I mean, I'm going to be, like I said, 40 in a couple of weeks, but it's like, or about like a month or so, but it's like a thing where it's like doing it made me feel like I was 18, like going to see shows with my friends. And it's like, I don't know, like there's something about it where it just, you almost tap into this like youthful thing. It's like a Peter Pan syndrome type thing where it's like, look at anybody who's been in the music industry, even like road dogs who have been doing it for 30, 40 years. There's still something youthful about them that like life hasn't caught up to them somehow or dragged them down or something. I don't know, but it's a thing where I feel like it's the fountain of youth, is just like being into music like that and just kind of making it a lifelong part of you.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, because everybody has it. I mean, music is a specific expression of it, but everybody just has that playfulness in them, that thing. And yeah, it's a shame. It feels like, I don't know. People feel like the older you get, the less I don't know, the less kind of like that's something you have in your life for some reason. I mean, and I guess there's maybe less opportunity culturally or societally around to but yeah, if you can find a way just to like play with your mates, it's like yeah, you're right, it's the fountain of youth. It will keep you young.
One of the last questions I have for you before I let you get back and exploring the city yourself. In recent years, I've kind of talked about a little bit of a struggle in doing this show, a weekly show for going on 8 years now, and kind of falling out of love with listening to music, making it feel like it's my job, that I have to like do something that's different from everybody else that's trying to do the same thing. And there was a part in there where I kind of had to find my why I wanted to do this, why I was passionate about it, why. And to me, it becomes this thing where, again, I kind of like to try to extract some wisdom from other people for myself and for others that are listening to this. Given the tenure of your band, what has been your why, and has it changed at all?
That's a good question. It probably has changed on some levels. The why to begin with was, I think probably like anybody who picks up a guitar or an instrument, you if it resonates with you and it becomes the thing that you feel comfortable in your skin, expressing something from inside you through, then that's like a really powerful experience. And I, as a kid, found it very difficult to express myself in many ways. Find it difficult communicating verbally, and find life quite overwhelming. And whenever I was able to find plug in a guitar and a distortion pedal, it helped as well, and have it be able to make sounds and express myself in a way like that was the why. And largely that hasn't changed. That is still the main reason. But it was to then play a gig, and then like we said, then it was to do a tour. And now it's about connecting with people, and getting to connect with like-minded people. And I don't know, it just feels like a worthy, I think anything where you're just putting something creative out into the world, or feels like like a good use of time for me. And there's not many other things I can do anyway, so yeah. So I like to hope that the why hasn't changed too much, that it's just a way of me being able to like kind of connect with the world around me a bit, and be with my friends, and to sort of have some sort of marker year by year of like that I've done something that I cared about, and you'll have that with your podcast now going 8 years. It's like there's a legacy, there's an archive of like, okay, I did this. It didn't exist prior to you. It wouldn't exist if you weren't there. You through effort and ideas, you've like magicked this thing.
Yeah.
We're speaking on it now. And I always just think that there is just a kind of like magic. It's like something didn't exist, a person has come along, and now there's a thing, and it's just in the world and exists, and people connect with it, and yeah, that's kind of magical for me.
Last question for you, and then I'll have you plug socials and all that kind of stuff. I always love this part right here that we're in, where the record's coming, some songs are out, still yours. It's still yours. You know what the record is, and it means something to you right now. In a few weeks, it's no longer yours. It's everybody's, and the dynamic then changes. What are you excited about for this record for people to hear? What are you most excited to have people experience?
Good question. There's a few songs on there, and on a kind of just very basic level, there's a few songs I'm excited for people to hear. There's one called Mother Belfast, and right in the we've ever written. But no, I'm excited just in that this transition. It's funny how you describe it, because that's just how it feels. The transition from it being this thing that we've kind of loved and cared for and like nurtured and just kept safe all this time is now about to head out into the world and be consumed and kicked around, and whatever will happen with it will happen. It's exciting because it's really actually amplified by being on this tour, because we haven't been in the States for like 7.5, 8 years. It had been like a few years, and then COVID happened. At each show we have people who've traveled crazy distances. This country's so big, people are driving 5-6 hours to come to a show, and we'll hang out at the merch afterwards, and they'll describe the album and the song that came along, and I think about, I referenced At the Drive-In, Relationship of Command in 2000, whenever I was like 15, something like that, and I remember imagining its little path from El Paso to some record label, to being pressed, to like, getting to England, getting to Ireland, getting to a little shop in Northern Ireland, and there just being this one CD that we found, and it changed like a whole bunch of our lives, And then, I'm not saying that our band's changed anyone's lives, but whenever we chat to people who've come to the show and they, reference this song or this time and what happened, and I just think that's so exciting. We're about to put out this new record, and that's going to happen multiple times with multiple different people, and I'm just hoping that the thing that resonated with the four of us at one point in time last year or the year before when we were writing it in Belfast is going to resonate in a different way with somebody else on the other side of the world. And that those are things that still, the concept of that just blows my mind that happens, so it's exciting, a couple of weeks to go, and we'll see.
It's funny, I was reminded of how sometimes life is interesting with how things just line up. Like I said, I was in Chicago last night to go see a show, and there's a friend that used to live out here but now lives down there in Chicago, and I haven't seen in a while, that came out to the show. And he owns like a small boutique label that does like a lot of different stuff, a lot of vinyl stuff. And he was talking about how he's going to Postfest that you guys are playing at in a couple of days. And he was like, "Oh, I'm really excited to see this one band," and mentioned you guys. I go, "Oh, fucking wild." Like a few people I've talked to who are like, "Oh, who do you got coming up?" And I was like, someone from this band. I'm like, never heard of them. And I was like, "Oh, they've been around for a while. Put out a couple of really good records that if you were into this scene, probably you would have heard of them." And so it's funny. I was like, "Oh, I'm talking to someone from that band." He goes, "Oh man, that's crazy. Like, I'm really excited to see them." And, it was just funny that I was like, everyone that I know has no idea, doesn't know the band name, no nothing. And then here I am, like in another city, haven't seen this dude in years. And he's like, "I'm really excited to go see. And so I watched you from afar in a couple of days." And I was like, all right, like, it's very weird that like I'm talking to someone tomorrow, and, life just kind of putting that in my lane, like of just like, this is a thing. And like, it connects, like, again, it kind of connects people. And it's just kind of interesting to see like the through line of where these things will take you or how they're going to manifest in your day-to-day. But it was kind of interesting just to see that, because like I said, that was not my experience the last like week or two of talking to people about this chat coming up.
I love that. I love that. What's your buddy's name?
Austin Keene. He is the owner of Mind Over Matter Records. So you may or may not see him. I think he's doing something with some of the bands, like Metavari, I think is one of the people that's on his label. So you'll probably potentially see him around.
Nice. I'll keep an eye out for him, man. That's class. That's,
heavily tattooed guy, has like an octopus tattooed on his neck.
Nice.
It'll be pretty hard not to see.
Yeah. If I see him, I'll go up and say hello to him. He'll be shocked.
Last question for you: where can people find you, or anything you would like to plug online?
Yes, you can find us and all of our stuff at ASIWYFA.com, which is the acronym for the band name. And on all the usual spots, Instagram, ASIWYFA_band, and you can get all the pre-orders for everything and the links to all the streams and everything on there. Go check it out, and the new record's out on the 9th of August, a few weeks' time.
Yep, that'll be out the day after my foot surgery, so I will enjoy listening to that while I'm laid up.
Oh, no way. What's happening with your foot?
Essentially, I have metatarsals and stuff that are out of place, so I got to have 2 of them fused. One of them moved back to where it needs to go. Apparently, I have a short calf muscle, which is a thing. So they're going to elongate that, and I'll be down for about 6 weeks at least. So I'll be doing lots of this. That's why when you were saying your bandmates got a ruptured Achilles, which is one of my worst fears ever, as is most foot things. I was like, oh, he's still touring, so I guess it's not so bad.
He's done very well. He was in a cast for 6 weeks, I think, and then he was in a boot for a few weeks, and then he's over here. But we keep catching him trying to lift gear and stuff, which he's not allowed to do. So we're
that'll probably be my thing too.
Well, good luck with that, John. I hope that goes all according to plan, and
me as well.
Listen.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy Chicago, and enjoy the rest of the tour. And hopefully, we can do another one of these and kind of do more of a long form thing, like I like to do, and kind of get into weird tangents and so forth. Maybe after the record's been out for a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Let's try and hook that up with the guys. I would love to chat to you again, John. That was really good. Yeah,
absolutely. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, likewise, man. Have a good one.
So that was my conversation with Rory. Want to thank him once again for taking the time, for finding some good Wi-Fi signal, and finishing the chat with me. Very much hoping that we can do another more kind of long-form version down the road. Obviously, 40. I think we got about 40 minutes in, roughly, and that's okay. It's kind of a good precursor, and honestly, like what's a little bit longer, but. There were some times I remember during the conversation where I was like, ooh, I really want to like peel this back a little bit and just kind of get into this and some more of the nuances of like this question, or would like to expand on this idea, but we only have a little bit more time. And honestly, I kind of want to get to a few other questions and talking points. So I kind of had to refrain. So it was one of those things where hopefully we can redo a part 2 and then kind of get really more in the weeds on some stuff. And honestly, I can pick his brain about some food places he went to. I'm intrigued to figure out where they went for food in Chicago, because like I had said, I had just gone the day before I did this chat, and then I was going like a day later after our chat, and then subsequently I ended up going to Chicago again not too long after that anyway. But it was funny thinking about this show because my wife and friends, sometimes when we hang out, they're always asking like, oh, who do you have on, or who did you just have on, or what are you putting out this week, or something like that. And it was a thing where I kind of had talked about this episode with a few people later in the evening, and they were like, yeah, I have no idea who that is, never heard of them. And I was like, well, it's kind of like this, and I'm kind of trying to explain things, and they're just like, no frame of reference. And I was like, okay. And it just kind of like takes the wind out of your sails at times when you're sort of excited and kind of on a high. Like sometimes when these chats happen, like you just kind of ride like a really good, like, man, it was a really good conversation I had with so-and-so, or it's got me thinking about something, and you want to like share it with people. And then when they just have no idea what you're talking about, it's like, man, I can't even get the footing to kind of like start the conversation. And so it was funny because I ended up going to the Misery Signal show, and one of our friends met up with us that lives in Chicago now, Austin, that runs Mind Over Matter Records. And it was funny because he was getting ready to go see, and so I watched it from afar. I think the next week at a festival that's kind of more, I think it was called like Post Fest or something like that. It's like a post rock, post hardcore, not post hardcore. I think it's, post rock or something like that. I don't know. All these subgenres don't really mean anything to me. It's like, what is it? It has loud guitars, and this is what it is. But it was funny because he was like, oh, I'm really excited to see this band. I'm really excited to hear the new record. And then I was like, oh, coincidentally, I just talked to Rory like yesterday, and it was a really great chat, and the record's really cool. And do you have it? Like, because I don't know if he's on some of these press emails that I am for this, considering he, basically gets a lot of bands that are on a kind of smaller scale on his roster to put out their releases and so forth. And if you haven't checked out what he does, again, Mind Over Matter Records, I think he does incredible stuff. It's a boutique label, pretty much primarily focuses on vinyl. And Austin is one of those people that will do crazy things to make an already great record stand out even more from a visual perspective. Like when you get these records, you're just like, this thing was like hand cut, was put together, and like I don't know how you had the mental capacity to even think like, wouldn't this be cool? Because all I see is this looks like a giant pain in the ass, and the whole process would just make me say motherfuck like every 10 seconds when something doesn't work out the way I want it to. But Austin has a very sharp, precise mind for a lot of these things, and I think if you are into vinyl or any of the bands on the roster, I definitely think you're going to be very well surprised and intrigued by some of the packaging and releases that he puts out. So go check that out. That's a cheap plug for that. But it was really cool to kind of be associated with some other people who knew of the bands I was talking about. And then, obviously we were talking about the new Oceans record, which honestly I should reach back out to the publicist for that because I keep getting that email, maybe having them on as well. But kind of interesting, just different social circles, and all of a sudden you go from being like, oh, no one knows what I'm talking about, to like, oh, everyone knows what I'm talking about. This is great. Which is why you need to have different types of friends, because sometimes you get to experience and delve into things that like a different subsect of friends don't necessarily give a shit about. So it's like my sports friends. I have sports friends. I got music friends. There's some carryover between the two, not a whole lot. And life's great that way. You can kind of compartmentalize sort of your life and interests. But all that said, let's start wrapping up this episode. Again, the new record Megafauna is out now via Velocity Records. If you would like to keep up with the band, you can find them. Essentially, just go to AndSoIWatchYouFromAfar.com. It's actually just the acronym, so ASIWYFA.com. Otherwise, if you would like to find them on Facebook, you can go to And So I Watch You From Afar. Instagram is at ASIWYFA_music. And Twitter is at ASIWYFA_band. And if you'd like to keep up with Rory, you can find him simple enough on his own website at www.roryfriers.com. Check him out on Instagram at Rory Friers and at Twitter at Rory_Friers if you'd like to keep up with everything going on with him. And for the podcast, if you'd like to keep up with us, simple enough, BrewSpeakPod on all your major social media platforms. Email me at brewtallyspeaking@gmail.com. Rate, review, subscribe, however you need to do that on whatever platform you are on, whatever you can do. Greatly helps. Thank you so much for everyone that's been doing all of those things lately, especially that Mark Volelunga episode. Holy shit. It has had a life on it, the legs on it, and I honestly shouldn't be surprised that Nothing More crowd really loves to show a lot of love and support for that band. So just been crazy to see how much that episode has just carried on over the last 2 weeks since it came out. So thanks for everyone for sharing and commenting on that one. Also want to thank Rockabilia. Head on over to rockabilia.com where they have all of the items you could possibly want if you are a music or memorabilia collector. They have like hundreds of thousands of items in their online store. They are adding things all the time. Collaborations with your favorite bands, some up-and-coming bands, nostalgic merch. I just saw an ad recently for a Nimrod-era windbreaker jacket from Green Day, and I was like, if it was available in a size that I like for my windbreakers, I would buy it. But maybe if you are a size medium, that is something that you would want. Head on over to the website. Use my code BREWtally at checkout. Take 10% off your total purchase order. Save a little bit of money for supporting a great company that supports this show. Want to thank them once again. And for the Brewtally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I will see you all next week where I have Cole from Trench on. That was a good time. Seems serendipitous to run it back to back since basically I did this interview the day before I went and saw Trench and the Misery Signals guys, and that's what we're doing. That's the tie-in. If you haven't figured out, sometimes I like to tie in guests in a weird way as it correlates to my life. So that is the correlation between this episode and the next one. Hope to see you back for that one. It was a good one, and I will see you all next week. Enjoy the rest of yours.